Welcome into a brand new Sports Hub Patriots podcast. Alex Barth, Matt Dolloff with you from 98.5, thesportshub.com. Getting ready to take a look at the Patriots' 30-13 loss to the San Francisco 49ers on Sunday. Another tough one for the Pats, Dolph.
Yeah. Look, a lot of my takes coming out of this game, Barthy, are a little more big picture because this is sort of the inflection point of the season that we were talking about pretty much throughout the offseason. Like, what is it going to look like through the first four games? What are those first four games going to look like? What is this San Francisco game going to look like? And I don't know. Am I a complete a-hole, Barth, for coming out of that saying, Patriots might not have been as bad as the final score indicated? I think people have said the opposite, that there was even worse than the score indicated. I'm not sure of that. I feel like the turnovers kind of changed the game for them. And I feel like if they don't turn the ball over in that game, it's pretty close, and like they might still lose because the Niners are just a better team, more talented team. And at the same time, like, who didn't have them going 1-3 after four games or 0-4? And so what I'm hoping the Patriots do after this game is, learn from the mistakes as best you can, especially, like Rhamondre Stevenson and the defense giving up big plays. Repeated mistakes are bad. I get that. But they just need to go forward and just accept what happened, put it behind them, go forward. Still a winnable game coming up this week against Miami, which I don't know if we're going to get into that game at all. We can talk about the Niners game. We don't have to get ahead of ourselves. But winnable game coming up. They're going back home. This is pretty much what people expected. Were people shocked and disappointed that they lost to the 49ers? I think pretty much everyone expected them to go in there and lose by double digits. So I feel like people are coming out of that game like despondent about the team and just dejected about the season. And I get it. The offense is kind of sad and painful to watch at times. But for me, it's just what I expected. I'm not coming out of it saying like this isn't what I expected. Right? Like I feel like that's exactly what should have happened.
I think that last part is the big point. And I definitely agree with you on the big picture thing, right? We had them at 1-3. That's more or less what they were. Where there's some more winnable games in there. You look at the Seattle game, that one's tough. I don't know that it definitely wasn't worse than the score indicated. I don't know that it was better than the score indicated either. My big takeaway was kind of that there's no real deeper meaning behind that game. It was what it was. They played a team, although they were banged up in the Niners, that is better than them. They were outclassed by a better team. And the things we knew were significant weaknesses coming into the season were their significant weaknesses. The offensive line, the quarterback position, and the defensive front were all areas that coming out of camp, you said this could get ugly. And it was ugly in that game. You mentioned the turnovers. This was Jacoby Brissett's worst game of the year by far. I'm somebody who through the first three games kind of said it's maybe not as much on him as some people are making it out to be. It's more on the offensive line. The offensive line was terrible in this game, but Brissett didn't help himself. Was holding the ball too long. It was just a bad throw on the interception. We can get to the line too, but that was an issue. The line was an issue. The defensive front wasn't good. I don't know. This game was more about confirming your priors. I don't know how many people walked away from this feeling anything new about the team itself. Now, maybe the approach to Drake Maye and the coaching staff and things like that. I understand if there's some new opinions there, but the roster as constructed, more or less, I think we got it was as advertised in this game.
Yeah, and maybe that's why I'm sort of looking at the big picture. I'm not like going to overreact to that game, and I wasn't even going to overreact to that Jets game last week. How'd the Jets do this week? You know what I mean? Like, that's a week-to-week league, and so look, if they look at the defense looks like that against Tyler Huntley and the Miami Dolphins next week, I know they have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, so big plays are still a threat. But if Tyler Huntley comes into Foxborough and shreds that defense, all right, then I might be coming over to the other side where people are talking about this team like, oh my God, it's worse than I thought. I can't believe it's this bad. Like, that's maybe the best team in the National Football League. And the San Francisco 49ers, I mean, not the Patriots. The Niners, like, they're not playing their best football. And so I get it. If they played their best football, maybe that is a total blowout type of game where they're, 42-10, something like that. I get it. But that's not a game that I expected them to win. And I expected them to take care of the ball a little better. I expected them to learn from their mistakes a little better And so if they were a little better in those smaller areas, maybe this is a closer game. I think it's fair to say that about 17-point loss is about right for that game. I don't want to just take away the turnovers, because the fumble was obviously bad by Stevenson. The interception by Brissett was horrible. But I think people are just sort of conflating issues, and like we'll get into the quarterback situation at some point, just the overall team quarterback situation. I think people are so desperate to see Drake Maye that they're starting to talk themselves into the O-line being good, or receivers starting to get wide open. And I know that there were some plays where there were open receivers,
or just not caring whether or not they're good. Like I'll just not to cut you off, but there is, I think, a sentiment out there among Patriots fans, and I want to get in the quarterbacks a little bit. We can do this now. I feel like there is a population of Patriots fans, and maybe it's not the majority, but they're out there, who, yes, there are those that maybe downplay how bad the situation is to justify getting Drake Maye on the field. I think there are others who fully understand how bad it is and don't care. And it's just play the kid because I want my shiny new toy. And look,
that's dangerous.
We can talk about what the plan is for the quarterback and whether or not you agree with the plan. Like, that's a conversation we can absolutely have. But to acknowledge that he shouldn't play and still say you want to see him is nonsense.
I think people that do that, I think they're falling into the same trap that fans of every crap organization fall into.
Yep.
Where they're just desperate to get that top pick in there. You got to play him. He's the number 1 overall pick, number 3 overall pick. He's there. He's here to play. I get it. He's here to play. I'm not saying sit him until 2027. I'm saying that the wise thing to do is to not rush him into what's a terrible situation right now. And to that, someone might say, well, so you're not going to play him at all this year because who expects the O-line to get better? Maybe I am saying that. Maybe I am saying put him on ice until 2025, because the mistake the Patriots made was in the offseason. The mistake they made was not investing more at tackle. The mistake they made was signing Jacoby Brissett to be their starting quarterback and thinking they could get by with him. And I think we're starting to see what he is over these last 2 games. I think the first 2 games he sort of made up for his shortcomings by, protecting the ball and keeping the ball out of danger, avoiding sacks and all that. Last couple of weeks, he's starting to turn the ball over. He's starting to hold on to the ball a little too long. He's missing guys. He's missing throws. And like we saw in that, I think the one play that people are going to point to is the interception. But I think there are other plays where, Pop Douglas crossed it over the field wide open. Like, we've seen a lot of plays like that. But what do people think Jacoby Brissett's going to do? Is Jacoby Brissett going to roll out to the right and drop a dime to Demario Douglas on the run? Like, even if he saw Pop Douglas cross it over the field, he's not going to make that throw. Like, look, there were plays where it's like, Drake Maye would make that throw. But that doesn't mean he needs to go in there yet. Like, other than making a handful of plays here and there, and maybe looking a little better, looking a little more explosive, a little more fun, Drake Maye isn't going to solve all their problems right now. And I know it would be a sort of unprecedented to barely play the 3rd overall pick throughout the season, but it might be the wise thing to do. We're talking about the next 10 to 15 years. And like, people are saying you want to punt on the season. I think the Patriots punted on the season. The Patriots basically punted on the season with the way they built this roster. And if their plan was to not play Drake Maye throughout the season, they didn't do nearly good enough job putting together a team that could win games in the meantime. So we're just going to have to put up with how bad it is right now and just hope for the best with what they got.
Yeah, and I do think it's going to be longer rather than not until we see Drake Maye. I don't think it's a coincidence that after he plays against the Jets and suddenly the fan base gets all wept up about it, you get Ian Rappaport saying, he's a ways away, right? And then they don't put him in the game yesterday against the Niners, even though 2-score game late in that game, that was still a game. I don't know why Alex Van Pelt is huddling up and running the ball late. I get it. The Niners are a better team. That's Kyle Shanahan. You can get that guy.
That was Andy Reid-esque. That was
right.
Pre-Mahomes, Andy Reid-esque.
So
they were running that offense.
The game wasn't over, but they clearly thought it was over. Still didn't put Maye in the game. Mayo comes out yesterday or this morning, says 100% Jacoby Brissett's our starter. Now, they also haven't added that buffer quarterback, and the decision may be made for them sooner rather than later. I still think there's a chance that happens. But if it's up to them, I don't know about the whole season, but I think it's a while until we see Drake Maye. I think that's what they want it to be. And I know Jerod Mayo was asked a couple times today, both by, on the other station and then on the media call, what exactly it is they're waiting for, what exactly the plan is. And he wouldn't share it. He basically said that it's it's nobody's business. I think he's trying to walk a fine line. He's basically taking the brunt of it. I think the reason they're not playing him is twofold. One, I think there's a lack of trust in the offensive setup. That both means the offensive line. I think it kind of means Alex Van Pelt, because he's sneaky criticized Alex Van Pelt in the media the last couple of days. Jerod Mayo.
Yeah. Saying we got to get the ball out quicker and things like that.
We got to get the ball out quicker. We got to get the ball down the field. So, but I don't think Jerod Mayo wants to come out and because throwing the offensive line under the bus is not only throwing those guys under the bus, you're also throwing Elliott Wolf under the bus. And then obviously saying that the offense isn't fully developed yet is throwing Alex Van Pelt under the bus. I wonder if that's kind of what's going on here. Is that Mayo and the team as a whole, not just Mayo, but the team as a whole knows because of the offensive line, they can't play him. I think it's mainly the offensive line, because the offensive line, they can't play him. And Mayo doesn't want to come out and throw Elliott Wolf under the bus, even though we all know what this offensive line is. And it's bad. It's really bad. There was a point yesterday, Dolph. Kane Wallace goes out of that game. Vidarian Lowe is already hurt. Chuks Okorafor's left the team. The only tackle that was with them in camp that was available to them at that point was Mike Onwenu, who spent most of the camp at guard.
Who is a guard,
right. I mean, and I get it. No, they're on their fourth string left tackle. Nobody's expecting them to have Joe Thomas out there as their fourth string left tackle. Like, there's depth to an extent. But we all knew coming in they weren't deep enough. Their first option should have been their third option, realistically. You had a guy that didn't want to be here. A guy that, in Caden Wallace, who's playing out of position, he is a right tackle and a rookie. Vidarian Lowe is like a solid backup. And that's, if that was it, and Vidarian Lowe was their second guy and he got hurt, it's like, all right, but they never had a true plan A, and they don't really have much on the right side either. They should be playing Wallace over there. They can't, because they had to play him at left, and then he got hurt. They never did enough to address the tackle position. And I don't want to hear, well, who did you want them to sign? Tyron Smith wasn't coming. You're like, I don't want to hear that.
No. Chuks Okorafor was the absolute only and best option. That's all they could do. Nobody else could have signed.
Chuks Okorafor, the issue of Chuks Okorafor is top of the depth chart. Bodies. Just bodies. They're trying guards at tackle, and they're moving guys around to different positions and things like that. They moved on from a guy in Connor McDermott who was decent for them last year. They moved on from a guy in Calvin Anderson, who I know he was cut on an injury settlement, but I believe he's re-signed. So clearly he's doing okay. Calvin Anderson, signed with the Steelers. Like a guy who had played NFL snaps before. Devontae Jacobs, all the power to him. Well, that was his second NFL game, his first career start against Nick Bosa. That's a tough spot. You shouldn't be there week 4. You really shouldn't be in that spot week 4. They didn't do enough to address the offensive line position in the offseason. I don't know what the plan is. Like, some things, like with Drake Maye, right? I don't necessarily agree with the plan of sitting him till maybe December, but I understand it. I can see the reasoning behind it. It's not what I would do, but okay. Like, I can see what they're going for with that. I can see the picture. What they were doing at tackle, I don't know how this was ever supposed to work. It just felt like, well, and they kind of talked about, well, Mike Onwenu was the best tackle. He just happened to be from our team. And, we got the guys we wanted, and we didn't, see many others. Maybe not every tackle out there is your favorite, but you need players at the position. They also came in on the practice squad with very few tackles. They just, again, it's bodies. They didn't have enough depth at a position where you need multiple guys to get through a season.
Right. And the injuries too. It's like, I mean, they're honestly at this point, they're pretty snake bit with injuries. Like David Andrews goes out of the game after one possession. You have to go with Nick Leverett, and thankfully they didn't have a botched snap.
Well, that's another one. Sorry to cut you off. That's another one where, yes, injuries happen. They came out of camp without a backup center. Nick Leverett was the best of a bad situation. Nobody was good. That's another one where just get a body.
They were snapping the ball to Framingham. They couldn't come up with a real backup center plan. Like that's another one. Like Jake Andrews could have been the backup center, but he's been on IR all season. He hasn't, but yeah, like Caden Wallace getting rolled up on his knee or his ankle, whatever's ailing him. Michael Jordan, the guy that started the game and started the first 3 games, he's out. Thankfully you got City So back, but he's in his first game back, and so like there's going to be rust there. He's not fully ready to go. And like, look, I know another thing that people keep pointing out is that like, all these other rookie tackles that got drafted before Caden Wallace, they're not playing well. Guys getting benched. There's bad offensive line play across the league. And I get that. And I think it's sort of a symptomatic of a league that they don't make these guys practice enough. I think the players made out well in the CBA there, and I think they gotta sort of figure out how to get these guys back on the field more often before the season so they're ready to go. And the football is so bad, and guys aren't getting killed, and quarterbacks aren't getting hit, and all that. And so, like, I get that there's problems across the league, but the Patriots are just on another level of that. And like, you factor in the injuries and the fact that they just have they had just a complete lack of bodies at every single position. And like Michael Wenu playing out of position, Caden Wallace playing out of position, the guy that they just got off waivers playing left tackle, and like it's really compounding in terms of all the other things. Even if they were all healthy, they wouldn't be a great offensive line. But I'm willing to entertain the idea of putting Drake Maye in there behind everybody healthy and like their best five that they could come up with right now. Right now, they're just not even close to that. And yeah, it does go back to how they mishandled in March and April. And like, as much as I like Jalen Polk and he played well yesterday, he had that near big time catch on 4th down. Like, I probably would have taken a tackle there. And I'm not saying not that he would have been Joe Thomas, like you said before. Nobody's saying Joe Thomas. We're saying, serviceable, competent. And look, and like people try to say like the protection wasn't bad yesterday. First of all, the run blocking was probably worse than the pass protection, to be fair, in that game against the Niners.
Yeah, they did not.
They at least they cut back on the total unblocked, blitzers and rushers coming in. There wasn't much of that from what I saw, at least rewatching the game. But the pocket kept getting pushed back and collapsing on Jacoby Brissett. There were plays where it's just like it looked like freaking Braveheart. Guys, just like a pile of bodies all flying around. No structure to it. And like they tried that screenplay that got completely blown up, and I couldn't tell. Like Greg Olsen himself was like, I can't tell if the linemen aren't there soon enough or if the running back wasn't. I'll probably put that one on the lineman. The way this season's going. So it's just, it's a total mess on that line right now. I just can't believe anyone would want to put Drake Maye behind that line right now. I think he could probably make up for some of the issues in ways that Jacoby Brissett couldn't. But I just think it's unwise to do it right now. I think you got to at least give it, another 2 or 3 weeks, see if everyone can get healthy, and then maybe you can streamline it a little better, get a little more continuity going. Nobody's saying it's going to be good at any point, and you could probably get by with average to below average, even with like a good quarterback. Like if I think Drake Maye is a good quarterback, and I think in a few weeks, if everyone's healthy and they get continuity and everybody's practicing together all week, same day, same group, then you can think about it. I just think right now it would be reckless. And I think it goes back to just people being desperate for, better quarterback play, which I understand, but it would be unwise. The wise thing to do is to continue to be patient and just put up with the mess that they've put together.
So you mentioned people comparing it to other situations. And I hear Washington a lot, obviously, because of Jaden Daniels. The Commanders are 7th in the league. Their protection rate's 27.7%. You mentioned other tackles that were drafted. The pick before Caden Wallace, the Commanders took a guy named Brandon Coleman at TCU. He's been excellent. I liked Coleman for the Patriots coming in. It goes back to should they have, and I like Caden Wallace too, but they need a little left tackle. Should they have traded up and adjusted it? And the other thing is, he's going to have to face pressure. He's going to have to learn how to do it. Everybody's line stinks, but there's still teams that are figuring it out. The Patriots.
Every time I look up, Barth, Jaden Daniels has no one within 10 yards of him, and he has 10 years to throw the ball. I'm like, I can't believe people are looking at Jaden Daniels like his line's not good. His line's not good. He's barely getting touched.
And I don't want to hear, I don't want to hear, and this is once the quarterback play improves, the line play will improve. Maybe a little bit. The Patriots pressure rate's almost 50%. Even if it went down 10%.
It's not improving the line play. It's covering up for him.
Even if Drake Maye reduced the Patriots pressure rate by 10%, they're still bottom 5 in the league. It's just not going to do it. It's not going to do it. And this isn't me defending the team. This is me redirecting the conversation. It's not about they're too scared to put Drake Maye in. It's about why they're there. And they're there because again, and I know it's a new front office. This goes back years. Neglecting the tackle position. Refusing to address it.
For 5-6 years, problem. Really. Ever since the Isaiah Wynn pick.
And look, because Isaiah Wynn was supposed to address it.
Look, I'll defend them. I'm defending them keeping Drake Maye on the sidelines.
Oh, no. That's the right thing to do. Where I'm at. It's the right thing to do for where they're at.
Yeah.
They should not be where they're at.
I think they know how much they suck right now.
They're making in the moment. The problem is they let it get to this point. For where they've let it get to, they're making the right decision. But it should have never gotten here. That is the bigger issue.
And you just look back on the spending. It's like they spent all this money on guys that they kept internally. One of them is Rhamondre Stevenson, who can't hold on to the ball. And Christian Barmore, look, I wanted them to re-sign him, but, he's gone. Blood clots. I don't know if
I'm not going to
anything they could have done about that. Maybe that one's unfair to bring up. Kyle Duggar, he got hurt yesterday, but he wasn't. I thought he was, not having a good start to the game yesterday. He factored into those big plays they allowed early on. They lock him up. I'm blanking on the other. Wenu, yes.
It's not even really spending, though. Like, you can get a backup tackle for $2 million. You can get a backup tackle for left tackle for less than what they paid Chukwuemeka for. It's not even It's not that they didn't bring in the big money guys. They didn't bring in anybody outside of one guy who didn't want to be here.
I'm not even talking about just tackle. I'm talking about anything. They didn't really spend on improvements.
Fair. Yeah,
they really skipped on that. The couple of the new additions I like so far: Antonio Gibson, Austin Hooper. I think they're off to solid enough starts. Obviously, Hooper with the touchdown yesterday, Gibson with a big run. I think Gibson's off to a really good start. Those guys are working out, but you couldn't sprinkle in one or two bigger signings to actually bolster this roster instead of, basically maintaining status quo and just sprinkling in, depth pieces and supplementary, complementary type of guys. I'm okay. I like spending in a vacuum, but I just think I think they spent too much on keeping the internal guys where they probably could have replaced, I don't know about replace, but they probably could have, found other guys long term that they didn't need to re-sign all those guys. I know it's Elliott Wolf's core philosophy, but it just goes back to them basically punting on this season by not spending much on additions / improvements and then not aggressively addressing the positions they needed to address, enough.
I mean, we can go around this circle on what should they've done in the offseason. I do want to bring it back to this season a little bit, though. And the question I wanted to ask you off the top before we got into the quarterbacks and everything else.
Was there a game yesterday, by the way?
How do you feel about the coaching staff through 4 games? Just big picture, their approach to in-game. We sort of touched on Alex Van Pelt taking it slow early in the fourth quarter in that one. I also really didn't like some of their fourth down decisions. Whether you go or not, I would have gone on that first one. On the second one, I can see kicking. But if you're going to go to line up and try to get them off sides, and it was way too long for a tush push. And that's what they were lined up in. And then go anyway. I didn't love that. And on the play call, what they do, this play, Caden Wallace got hurt. They brought in Caden Wallace as an extra tackle. And so you're built up to one side. And instead they run, and Greg Olson broke this down on the broadcast, did a great job of it.
Yeah, instead is weird.
They run to the 2 tight ends on the other side. That's the second, at least that I can remember, that's the second time they've done something like that this year. If you go back to Seattle, the 3rd down in overtime, and they ended up getting an illegal formation penalty call for it, so it didn't matter, but they actually went unbalanced line. Do you remember that? Where they put Henry down essentially as the left tackle and put multiple tackles over on the right side. And then they ran. Yeah, they ended up getting called for illegal formation. But the point being, you go on balanced line to run the ball on 3rd and short. You had Caden Wallace next to Mike Onwenu next to Layden Robinson. Those are probably your 3 best run blockers. Game on the line, and you run to the other side. I brought it up that week. That was a play that bugged me. This is now a thing where, 3rd and short, 4th and short, got to have it, and they're running to the weak side. I understand not wanting to be predictable, but there's certain plays where you're just lining up with the intent of, I know what I'm going to do. You know what I'm going to do. Try and stop me. When you're built to run the ball, this should be one of those situations. And it's, again, the second time in 4 games where I feel like they've gotten too cute with it. And, all right, we're going to load up with all our run blockers over here, and then we're going to run away from it. You don't have the line talent to not play to your strengths in that situation. And they've now done it twice with the game on the line. Or I guess the game wasn't really on the line in this one, but they've done it twice at big moments in games.
Yeah, I mean, once you're down 17 in the 3rd, 4th quarter, it feels like the game's on the line every time you have a big play like that, especially if you're going forward on 4th down.
Yeah.
And look, the coaching staff, look, we came out of that Cincy game saying, oh my God, they might just be well coached. And so I know you touched on maybe that was just them having all summer to get ready for that game. And they played a near perfect game. I thought they called the game well and they were disciplined. They didn't get too many penalties. They didn't turn the ball over, anything like that. Like they felt like a disciplined, prepared, well-coached team. And like, I feel like the Seattle game, like it's not, they weren't unprepared for that game, but like there were just little pockets of like what was going on there with play calls and decisions and like, scheme stuff. And I think the last 2 or 3 games is what we should expect from the coaching staff, which is it's going to be hit and miss. Like I don't think that, they're going to be like the worst coach. They might be the worst coaching staff, like I guess, because I haven't really I haven't looked at every other coaching staff in the league. So, I mean, I just don't come out of that game saying like, oh my God, they were so horribly outcoached. Because I feel like if Kyle Shanahan and his guys coached circles around them in that game, again, they win that game like 55-0. Like I feel like there were times where like you saw it, like the tackling was better, for instance, and the tight end, the touchdown to Austin Hooper was a really good play call, I thought. And so like you have these little moments, but you also have these little moments, like on the 4th and short that you were talking about, where it's like I think Alex Van Pelt, especially, you're starting to see, well, maybe not why he's not calling plays, but like you're starting to see the inexperience with play calling with Alex Van Pelt. I think that's, I don't think he's a guy that's really going to be too imaginative. He's not going to be a guy that's going to have a very detailed, specific game plan that's tailored to the opponent. I've been saying for weeks now that like he's a guy that he'll drop plays, but like, is it going to be the right call for the situation? Is he going to have, is he going to be dialed in that regard? And I think we're seeing the answer that it's not really the case. Like, I think he's going to have to hope that he's not going up against a savvy defensive coordinator or a really talented defense. I think we just have to hope that the offense gets some favorable matchups in terms of what they're going up against defensively, because Alex Van Pelt is not going to be the guy that takes them over the top. He'll have his moments. He'll have little flashes like on the Hooper touchdown. But yeah, other than that, like, and defensively, it wasn't perfect either. Like I said, the tackling was better, but the containing the edge was not better. In fact, that might have arguably gotten worse. Like Keon White blowing the edge multiple times. Dietrich Wise has always been a guy that's had trouble sort of containing the edge. Josh Uche blows the edge about as bad as you'll ever see, trying to get to Jordan Mason on that touchdown run. He had no chance on that. And I thought the defense had maybe the worst situational drive of the game, which was after that Hooper touchdown. First play, next drive, 53 yards to Deebo Samuel. I mean, can't happen. Like, you had momentum. I think I that might have been when I saw you tweet, like, well, so much for momentum. Like, they had a chance to get back in that game. They were only down 10, and they give up that huge play down the field. And it's like, what's going on there? Like, I know Kyle Duggar's out, but you signed Jalen Hawkins to play deep safety, and I think he, you got to put some of that on him. If you're giving up a 50-yard pass, there's something wrong with the deep safeties. And like, I get that, and to some extent, they don't really have the horses, especially against the run. Like, they're missing Juwan Bentley against the run. They're missing an element of toughness there, and an element of preparedness and play calling and things like that. And so maybe that they're going to need time to adjust, at least. So like, maybe they'll get better in that regard, because they got to get used to playing without Juwan Bentley. It's still only been a couple games. But yeah, like, the injuries are killing them. But like, I feel like, again, I think it's just hit or miss. Like, I'm not saying that they're perfectly average as a coaching staff. They might be below average, but I don't think it was quite as disastrous as people are making it out to be. I think this is just what you're going to have to live with, which is, it does go, not to go back to the offseason again, but like, it goes back to what they chose on the coaching staff too. It's like, this is what they went with. And, I feel like we just have to live with that for now.
Just to go back to that play you're talking about, the deep shot early in the third quarter, classic Bill Belichick coaching point. If you're the deep safety, rule number 1, nobody gets behind you. And I don't know exactly what the call was there, but it sure looked like Jalen Hawkins was the deep safety, yet he fires down to cut off a crosser, and that leaves Jonathan Jones one-on-one with Deebo Samuel. Can't have that. Can't have it. And it absolutely, any momentum they had, right out the window with that. You let a championship team get its legs back under it. You can't be doing that. Real quick, because I do want to talk a little bit about Miami, but real quick here as we wrap it up on San Francisco, a couple bright spots. Let's give a couple bright spots. Jalen Polk was good. Jalen Polk was good in this game. Had a couple tough catches. He had that one down the sideline. It honestly, he just got a foot out because it landed on somebody else. I give the kid credit for that. I give the kid credit for that one. And there's other times too where he's open, he's not getting the ball. The opportunities are few and far between for him right now because the rest of the offense is just atrocious. But the opportunities he's getting, he's making the most of. There's probably more opportunities there that they can't capitalize on. I don't know that he's going to be like an all-pro or anything, but he doesn't look out of place. He looks like an NFL receiver. He looks like a guy who can contribute, strongly contribute to an offense. I think you have to feel good about what you see. And not just yesterday, but through 4 games. I think you have to feel good about what you've seen from Jalen Polk.
Yeah, no, good game for him. And I think you can look at that catch doesn't count on the score sheet or anything, but that was a really good play by him. And
right, you evaluate the player on it, and he made a good play on the ball.
And it was just a weird kind of, tangle up with the other guy's foot. And most of the time, call it 9 times out of 10, his other foot hits the turf there, and that's a catch. And
look, let me say this. That ball should have been intercepted. Just off the throw, you look at kind of the setup when the ball's thrown, it should have been intercepted. That it ended up not just as an incompletion, but as a borderline catch. It shows incredible ball skills from Jalen Polk.
Yeah, no, he does. He does have good ball skills. And look, I think just the thing is he's not getting wide open, and that's not really his game. He might get open. You might be able to get open with his route running at times, but he's going to have to be a guy that can make a contested catch. And I think that's a good sign for him. And he made a couple other actual catches that counted that were sort of contested. And so it's good that Jacoby Brissett's looking his way a little more.
Yeah.
And there were the aforementioned plays where Pop Douglas is getting open over the middle of the field. And so when Drake Maye finally goes in, he's going to be looking to those guys. He put in the more work with Jalen Polk and guys like Pop Douglas more than anyone in the offseason, his fellow rookies. And so when Drake Maye goes in, maybe those guys will start making more plays. Maybe they'll move the ball a little more. There's a little bit of hope there. He was a bright spot for sure.
And the other bright spot, special teams, another excellent game for them. Really, they've been week 1 masterclass, week 2 more good than bad, but there were a couple things. This was another just all around excellent game. Obviously, you have Joey Sly hitting from 64-3, the 4th longest field goal, or tied for the 4th longest field goal in NFL history. Just the 4th kicker since 1994 to hit a 50-yarder and a 60-yarder in the same game.
That's crazy.
He was good. Bryce Berringer, 4 punts.
Randomly drug test today.
I saw that, Joey. It's random, very random. Bryce Berringer, 4 punts, all down inside the 20. Christian Ellis, dynamite in coverage, also forced that fumble on the kickoff.
Marcus Jones had a bunch of good returns.
He definitely had one that stood out to me. So as much as we maybe talk about AVP and Mayo and the defensive coaching staff, Jeremy Springer might be the answer there. I'm very encouraged, and I know people are going to roll their eyes at that and be, oh, great, special teams.
It's a little tongue-in-cheek. It's a little tongue-in-cheek, I know, but I've been on this for weeks. You want your bright young mind? There you go.
And
Jeremy
look,
Springer, John McVay guy.
This is a team that's going to have to win on the margins, period.
Yeah.
They're going to have to win on the margins to win, and special teams is the margin. So the fact that they have that there, it's something to hang your hat on. Looking ahead to the Dolphins game, there might be 70 combined runs in this game. We know just what the Patriots are, what they want to do, and the Dolphins are going to have you or me at quarterback at this rate. Or I think, we know it's going to be Tyler Huntley, actually, right, at this point? I guess we got to see. They play tonight, right?
I think it's Huntley tonight.
So we got to see what happens tonight. That's right. They do play tonight. We're recording this on Monday, by the way. So there's going to be 70 combined runs in this game. This is a real, for the offensive coaching staff, for Jerod Mayo, real good test here. What the hell do you do about Rhamondre Stevenson? He's fumbled 4 times in 4 games, lost 2 of them. This one was early in the game, coming off a week where ball security was a point of emphasis. That's usually a guy you don't put back on the field. But if you're going to list their top playmakers, he's 1 or 2. It's him or Pop Douglas, and they don't seem too interested in using Pop Douglas. You're arguably taking your best playmaker off the field, but he's the guy that's hurting you. And as Jerod Mayo has said a couple times now, they can't win the game turning balls over. They just don't have that margin for error. I'm glad I don't have to make the decision. It's a tough decision. I do think you probably have to limit him. But he's putting the coaching staff in a really tough spot because they need him on the field. They need him on the field to make this offense go. But if he's going to be putting the ball on the ground, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I want, as much as I want to say you have to sit him. Can they just go without him? But at the same time,
I guess this is what I'm asking you, Dolph. Do you and when I say sit, it doesn't have to mean 0 carries, but who are you building your run game around next week? Antonio Gibson or Rhamondre Stevenson?
I would build it. I would go Gibson. I think Gibson's playing really well. I think
Gibson
he's having
playing well.
Good start. Limited touches, but like it feels like every time he touches the ball, he's sort of making things happen out there, making guys miss, and he's breaking off these huge runs. And he had the big one yesterday too. I know the game was out of hand at that point, but like I would, if you're not going to sit Stevenson, you got to send some kind of message. Go out, lead out with Gibson. Start him. Move Stevenson down the depth chart a little bit. And like I get it, like he's your best runner and he's your most consistent runner, your best power runner and all that. He's useless without the ball. He's useless if he's putting the ball on the ground. So it's like how else is he gonna understand that he has to hold on to the ball if he didn't get the message after finally losing a fumble, and he goes out there just like carelessly lets the ball get knocked out from him in this game. Like, how else are you going to send a message to him? And like, this is where Bill Belichick would have sent a message. If Bill Belichick would have sat Stevenson for the rest of the game, maybe even last week against the Jets, but
he would have sat him for the year. We would never see Rhamondre Stevenson again.
We might have never seen him again. It might have been Antonio Gibson, and like Jermichael Hasty had a few good runs yesterday.
I think Stephen Ridley's still waiting on the bench to go back in.
Yeah, the more just sit Stevenson, just bench him for a week, like make him inactive. I'm at this point, like Gibson's playing well. Jermichael Hasty looked good yesterday. You got to send a message to the guy. You friggin' tape the ball to
Kevin Harris from the practice squad.
Yes. Yeah. Like I know they put Stevenson back in and he held onto the ball, but he even had a couple good runs after he came back in the game. But like, I don't think you can go soft on the guy, especially, 4 fumbles in 4 weeks, 2 in a row where he lost it to the other team. And like, I think you could argue that they lost this game because of turnovers. Even if you count the turnover on downs, it's like, it was like 20 of 30 points off turnovers. So it's like, you can't have it. This is a team that can't afford to turn the ball over. And I know that like Jacoby Brissett finally threw his first interception. So, and he lost a fumble yesterday too. I know that was a late game out of hand and all that.
Yeah. People are going to hear you saying this, say, well, then bench Jacoby Brissett. Like,
I mean, okay. Yeah. Look, I already said, like, I'm kind of done with the Drake Maye. It's like, when he plays, he plays.
Right.
I'm so sick of it. Everybody's just dug in. And the funny part is,
Barth. I'm with you though. And it's a good point. Sorry to cut you off, but
yeah,
he's not going to play. He's not going to play in the immediate future. And we can talk about the causes of that. Glad he should be playing. I have really no interest in doing that because it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So
when he finally plays, it's funny when he finally plays, if he plays well, both sides of the argument are going to be like, see?
Yeah.
Everyone's gonna be like, I told you he was good. And someone like me could be like, well, I think it helped that he sat. I don't know that he would have looked this good if they played in week 1.
We're just going to ignore the passage of time and say that, yeah, he did. He definitely would have been this week 1. Those 2 months didn't matter at all. One more thing for the week ahead before we wrap this up. It kind of about the Dolphins game, kind of just big picture. There's been a lot of questions really since camp about why the Patriots weren't going out and bringing in one of these veteran tackles that's unsigned. And I wrote something about this on 985thesportshub.com this morning, kind of look at the options. You have DJ Humphrey, who's coming off a torn ACL. You have Charles Leno, who's coming off hip surgery. There's another guy coming, Bakhtiari is coming off his 5th knee surgery in 3 years. It's not all ACL, but that was part of it. You have Donovan Smith, who's coming off of being arguably the worst left tackle in football last year. And you have Jason Peters, who's 42 years old. Those are kind of the guys you're looking at. And in a league where tackle depth is such an issue, and there are contenders that need tackles, the Rams are on their 3rd string left tackle. You would think, if those guys are unsigned, it maybe tells you something. But Jerod Maye was asked today about the possibility of signing one of those guys, and he didn't dismiss it. He didn't say they were going to do it. He basically said, me and Elliot talk about that all the time. We're meeting today. And I think that's notable because last week, Jerod Maye was asked about potentially signing a veteran quarterback to back up Jacoby Brissett so they wouldn't have to play Drake Maye before they want to, and he outright denied it. So we know he will do that. He didn't dismiss outright signing a tackle. Again, I wrote kind of my thoughts on 985thesportshub.com this morning. People can check those out. Would you sign one of these? I've been calling them the red flag tackles because kind of a red flag they're out there. And if so, like, do any of those guys stand out to you at all?
Of course. Yeah, of course I'd sign. At this point, like, we're not like, people will say like there's a reason these guys are on the street and all that. But like, would David Bakhtiari really be that much worse than DeMontre Jacobs? Like, would Charles Leno be that much worse than DeMontre Jacobs? I think it's worth taking a shot on those guys.
The argument would be if Bakhtiari goes out there 5 snaps, blows his knee out, Now you're playing with a guy who maybe didn't get as many reps during the week. And do you trust him to get through a game? Do you trust these guys to get through a full game? That to me is the what if, is if they're not going to be able to finish games, it doesn't matter. That's just me playing devil's advocate.
I think at this point that you're sort of out of options and you just got to try whatever you can. I think if they were still sticking with Vidarian Lowe, for instance, if Vidarian Lowe is staying healthy and just not playing well and just being what he is, which is not a good starting left tackle, and people are saying bring in Bakhtiari, bring in, I'd say no. I mean, I think you just got to live with what you get from Vidarian Lowe, which is not like high level starting, starting
below average,
but now you're on a guy that you just signed off waivers, right before the start of the season. You're on your fourth guy. And so take a shot on one of these guys. If they're willing, if they're ready and they want to play, they want to come in, they know there's a chance that they could come in and play right away. Take a shot, especially a guy like Bakhtiari with a good pedigree. And Charles Leno has a pretty good pedigree too. And I know they're both coming off surgery. They're old, all that. But this team in this particular situation, you gotta start exploring that avenue. That's how bad it's gone. And so I just think that's the reality for them.
Yeah, I don't know. Bakhtiari for me, I'm not opposed to it. And obviously Bakhtiari, there's the Packers connection and all of that. So he does make some sense. But I can almost definitively say he's done just because it's been 3 years now of this. Ideally, to me, DJ Humphrey would be the guy. Now, he tore his ACL week 17 last year. So he's only about 9 months removed. That's not a lot of time on a torn ACL. Even Kendrick Bourne coming back right now 11 months after feels a little quick. Charles Leno had a hip injury. That scares me. That's, that's a tough one to come back from. It might be Donovan Smith, who was just atrocious last year. 9 penalties in 13 games, 42 pressures. But if you're just trying to get somebody, at least he'll hold and the quarterback won't get lit up. And I think right now that if that's what you're going to do, that's what you need to look for. Because Bakhtiari, Leno, I don't know if they're getting you through a game. Humphreys would be nice. I think part of the reason he's not signed yet is because he can't play. And he might not be able to play this season. I don't think a team's going to sign him just to rehab him. Right? I think he's a guy
he's physically incapable of playing. You mean look,
I'm not a doctor. I don't know, but usually ACL 10 months on the early side, right? To come back from a torn ACL.
Yeah, only Wes Welker comes back within 7 months from a torn ACL.
Right. And he tore it first week of January last year. We're not even in the first week of October yet. So I just wonder if that's a thing, because he was good last year. He was good last year. He also had a
DJ Humphrey. You're talking.
Yeah. He also had a back injury 2 years ago too. So I wonder if teams are just you need to be fully healthy before we give you a call.
Okay. Well, then bring him in and just ramp him up. You don't have to throw him right in there.
I guess. Well, that's my point. I would go with Donovan Smith. Just get him in there and let him hold guys so the quarterback doesn't get killed. But we'll see.
But bodies are dropping, and you're on your fourth guy that you just got off waivers. Bring someone in. I don't care who it is. I don't need anyone in particular.
I'm surprised you
They
bury
all have
Caleb
their red flags.
That's your guy.
Just bring someone in.
I'm surprised you want to bury Caleb Jones. That's your guy.
I'd give Caleb Jones a shot too.
There we go. All right, there it is. We'll end it there. We'll end it with Dolloff advocating for Caleb Jones. You're hardly alone on that, by the way. We got a call on Catch 22 last week, myself and Evan Lazar on Patriots.com. Someone goes, yeah, he's 6'9", 370. Why isn't he playing? It's because, and I said this at the time, like this, as somebody who was a big fan of Taco Fall, there's more that goes into it than just this. I'm still a fan, by the way, of Taco Fall. He should have played more, but he wasn't going to go out there and be prime Shaq. I understood that. Right. All right, we'll wrap it up before we get into the Taco Fall talk. We'll have more on the Patriots throughout the week on 98.5 thesportshub.com. We'll have a preview pod coming up later this week as well. So be sure to subscribe to the Sports Hub Patriots audio feed wherever you get your podcasts and to the Sports Hub YouTube channel for the video edition. For Matt Dolloff, I'm Alex Barth. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time.
See ya.